An intentionally calming and boring bedtime story, perfect for falling asleep. Enjoy. For the best experience, I recommend lowering the volume until my voice is just a whisper, barely audible. This will make the journey even more relaxing and soothing. The images on screen are only gentle guides, but the true magic happens when you close your eyes and let your imagination bring the story to life. Support the channel by liking and subscribing. Lieutenant Commander Nathaniel Nate Harris felt the familiar weight of cold steel beneath his feet as he walked the narrow corridor of the USS Artemis. Newly promoted to captain of the United States Navy's most advanced nuclear submarine, a colossus of stealth technology and silent power, he should have felt pride, perhaps even a touch of triumph. Instead, a persistent unease gnawed at his gut. A shadow that had followed him since rumors about Sycamore Knoll began circulating in the tightest circles of naval intelligence. Officially, it was just an unusual underwater geological formation off the coast of Malibu. Unofficially, whispers spoke of something more, something not of Earth, an alien structure dormant in the depths. Nate's promotion had not been a surprise. His career was marked by cool competence and an almost monastic dedication to service. He was a brilliant strategist, a respected leader, but beneath the impeccable facade of a naval officer burned a secret obsession with unexplained underwater phenomena. It wasn't the sea monsters of ancient legends that fascinated him, but the silences on the sonar, the phantom echoes that defied logic. The fragmented accounts from crews who saw things that shouldn't exist in the dark, pressurized depths. Sycamore Knoll was the epitome of these mysteries, a focal point for his unanswered questions. The Artemis's current mission was routine, a standard training exercise designed to familiarize the new crew with the vessel's capabilities and test systems after a recent refit. Clear orders from Pacific Fleet Command: follow a predetermined course, execute simulated maneuvers, and return to Naval Base San Diego in 72 hours. But for Nate, the proximity of Sycamore Knoll was an irresistible temptation, a unique opportunity that might never come again. The formation lay less than 200 nautical miles off the designated course. A significant detour, but technically feasible without raising immediate suspicion, provided he carefully manipulated the navigation logs. On the bridge, the low light from the instruments cast an greenish glow on the focused faces of the duty crew. The constant hum of electronic systems was the only soundtrack, a testament to the pulsating life within the metal hull. Nate stopped behind the navigator's station, Lieutenant Silver, a young officer with sharp eyes and an almost reverent respect for the new captain. Navigation status, Lieutenant. Natty's voice was calm, controlled, belying the internal turmoil. Course 090, speed 15 knots, Captain. All systems operating within normal parameters. We will reach the exercise starting point in approximately 4 hours, Silver replied, without taking his eyes off the screen. Nate nodded slowly, his fingers drumming almost imperceptibly on the back of the chair. The decision was already made, brewing in his mind for days. It was an immense risk. Disobeying direct orders, putting the multi-billion-dollar vessel and its crew in danger because of a personal obsession, was the kind of action that ended careers, that led to courts martial. But the pull of the unknown, the possibility of confirming what he had suspected for so long, was stronger than the fear of consequences. "Lieutenant Silver," Nate began, his voice slightly lower, "prepare a course change. New heading, 1 to 5. Maintain current speed." Silver hesitated for a moment, fingers hovering over the console. He looked up at Nate, a silent question in his eyes. "Captain, this course deviates significantly from the designated training area. We don't have authorization to—" "I am aware of our orders, Lieutenant," Nate interrupted, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "I am exercising my prerogative as commander to investigate a sonar anomaly detected in this area. Log it as an investigation of an unidentified underwater contact, transient in nature. Proceed with the course change." The explanation was thin, almost transparently false, but it was a direct order. Silver swallowed hard, professionalism overcoming apprehension. "Aye, sir. Changing course to 1 to 5. The lieutenant's fingers moved quickly over the controls, and the submarine's low hum shifted subtly as the massive vessel began its smooth turn to the southeast, away from the safety of routine and plunging towards the enigma of Sycamore, Knoll. Nate watched a change on the digital tactical map, the Artemis icon now pointing towards the dark blue void where the underwater formation awaited him. A chill ran down his spine, a mixture of excitement and dread. He knew he had crossed a line, not just in terms of naval regulations, but a personal line, a point of no return in his quest for the unexplained. The obsession, once an undercurrent in his life, had now taken the helm. The following hours passed in quiet tension. Most of the crew remained unaware of the unauthorized detour. Only the navigation and sonar officers knew of the change, and they maintained a professional silence, trusting the captain's judgment even as questions hung in the air. Nate remained on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the instrument readings, searching for any sign, any hint that his intuition was correct. The passive sonar swept the depths, listening to the ocean's sounds, while the active sonar remained off to maintain the Artemis's stealth. The sonar officer, Chief Petty Officer Davies, a veteran with countless hours of service on submarines, frowned at his screen. "Captain, in picking up something strange. Intermittent echoes, very faint, bearing towards our new course. Doesn't match any known signature, biological or mechanical." Nate's heart quickened. "Can you isolate the source, Davies?" "Negative, sir. It's like it's phasing in and out, very erratic. And the estimated depth is well below the seabed in that area, according to the charts." "Impossible, really. Impossible." The word echoed in Nate's mind. That was exactly what he was looking for. The impossible becoming possible in the depths where sunlight never reached. "Maintain contact, Chief. Log everything. Report any changes." "Aye, sir." The Artemis continued its silent advance, a black arrow gliding through the deep waters towards an uncertain destination. Aboard, Captain Nate Harris, driven by an obsession that now dictated his actions, led his crew and his cutting-edge vessel towards an encounter with the unknown. unaware that the price of curiosity might be far greater than he had ever imagined. The routine had been broken, the orders ignored. The abyssal threshold beckoned. As the USS Artemis neared the estimated coordinates of Sycamore Knoll, a tense quiet settled over the bridge. The unauthorized detour hung heavy in the air, an unspoken truth lingering among the duty crew. Nate Harris maintained his calm demeanor, but inwardly, his nerves vibrated with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The intermittent sonar echoes reported by Chief Davies became more frequent, though they still defied logical classification. They were like ghostly whispers from a place that should not exist. Current depth, 2,500 meters, Lieutenant Silver announced, his voice slightly strained. Approaching the projected location of the Knoll. Seabed topography matches the charts, but we still have no direct reading on the formation itself. Nate leaned over the tactical console, observing the digital representation of the dark abyss outside. Activate active sonar, short-range scan, single pulse, he ordered. It was a calculated risk. The active pulse would reveal the Artemis's position to any potential listeners, but he needed a clear picture of what lay ahead. Activating active sonar, single pulse, Davies confirmed. A soft, almost inaudible ping reverberated through the hull, a question cast into the pressurized darkness. Seconds of silence stretched, taut with expectation. Then, the sonar screen exploded into a chaos of data. "Captain, anomalous readings everywhere," Davies exclaimed, his eyes wide. "I'm getting multiple solid returns directly ahead, but the structure makes no sense. Impossible geometry, sharp angles where there should be smooth curves, and it's pulsing." "No, sir. It's absorbing the sonar pulse in some areas and reflecting incoherently in others." Before Nate could fully process the information, the bridge lights flickered erratically. Alarms began sounding on different consoles, a dissonant chorus of alerts. "Inertial navigation system failure," shouted Silver. "We've lost positional reference. Ballast controls unresponsive," came the voice of the diving officer from across the bridge. "We're losing depth." "What is happening?" Nate demanded, gripping the edge of a console as the submarine took an unexpected lurch. "Reports. Multiple cascading system failures," Captain replied Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Anya Sharma, her voice tense but steady over the intercom. "Reactors stable, but secondary systems are overloaded. It feels like massive electromagnetic interference from an unknown source." It was then that the stranger reports began to come in. A crewman in the torpedo room reported seeing shadowy figures moving outside the hull, despite the crushing pressure. Another, in the mess hall, started screaming about colored lights dancing on the walls. Hallucinations, mass hysteria, or something else. Nate felt a sharp pang behind his eyes, and for a fleeting instant, the image of the bridge seemed to ripple, the console lights blurring into distant stars. He blinked hard, shaking off the sensation. Fear began to seep into his resolve. Had he grossly underestimated the Sycamore Knoll phenomenon? "Captain, the magnetic field around the hull is fluctuating wildly," reported Davies, his voice thick with disbelief. "And passive sonar is picking up a sound. Low frequency, almost infrasonic, but it's rapidly increasing in intensity." A deep hum began to vibrate through the very metal of the submarine, a resonance that seemed to penetrate bone. It wasn't just heard, it was felt. The lights flickered again and died, plunging the bridge into near total darkness, broken only by the ghostly glow of red emergency lights. "Emergency power engaged," Sharma announced over the intercom. "But I don't know how long we can maintain essential systems." The submarine shuddered violently, as if gripped by an invisible, colossal hand. Metal groaned under unimaginable stress. Men and women were thrown from their stations, cries of alarm and pain echoing in the confined space. "What was that?" Nate yelled, struggling to stay upright. "Damage report." But before any answer could come, an immense, overwhelming force enveloped the Artemis. It wasn't a collision, but a sensation of total displacement, as if the very fabric of space-time was being warped around them. The hum became deafening, filling every cubic inch of the submarine, overpowering all other sounds, all thoughts. There was a dizzying sensation of falling, not downwards, but inwards, as if the universe were folding in on itself. The emergency lights flickered and died, casting everyone into absolute darkness. The sound ceased abruptly, replaced by a silence so profound it was almost painful. And then, as suddenly as it began, the sensation of movement stopped. The silence persisted for a long, terrifying moment. Nate held his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs. What had happened? Where were they? Slowly, the emergency lights flickered back on, casting a faint red glow over the scene of chaos on the bridge. Crew members groaned, trying to rise. Broken consoles sparked. "Reports," Nate managed, his voice hoarse. "Systems coming back online, slowly," stammered Silver, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. "But the readings, Captain, they make no sense. Depth off the scale, external pressure unimaginable. And the sonar, it's empty, completely empty, as if we're nowhere." Anya Sharma broke in over the intercom, her voice filled with awe. "Captain, external sensors are active. We have visual." "Put it on the main screen, Lieutenant," Nate ordered. The main view screen, previously displaying tactical data, flickered, then lit up with a grainy but unmistakable image from the Artemis's high-pressure external cameras. No one was prepared for what they saw. Outside, in the darkness that should have been the impenetrable abyss, there was light. Not the faint bioluminescence of deep-sea creatures, but structured, organized lights. Pulsating lines of energy traced the contours of immense buildings. Alien and gravity-defying in architecture, rising from a seabed that shouldn't exist at this depth. Towers twisted into impossible spirals glowed with a soft internal light. Delicate, almost web-like structures connected the buildings, with small lights moving along them like silent vehicles. The USS Artemis floated, intact but helpless, in the midst of a vast underwater metropolis, a city of impossible beauty and incomprehensible technology hidden in the planet's darkest depths, a place no human map had ever charted. The descent into the unknown was over. They had arrived, and the silence outside seemed to watch, to assess, to judge the newly arrived intruders. The silence on the bridge of the USS Artemis was heavy, thick with collective shock and disbelief. The image on the main screen was no mirage, no sensor malfunction. It was real. An entire city, vast and luminous, existed in an abyss that should have been devoid of life, save for the most extramophilic forms. The crew, trained to face human enemies and the relentless pressures of the deep ocean, now confronted something entirely outside their paradigm. An alien civilization flourishing secretly beneath kilometers of water. Nate Harris felt the ground vanish beneath his feet, not literally this time, but psychologically. His obsession had led him here, but the reality he found surpassed any theory or speculation. This was no ancient, abandoned structure. It was alive, vibrant, and technologically so advanced it made the Artemis, the pinnacle of human engineering, seem like a primitive relic. He took a deep breath, trying to impose order on the chaos in his mind and around him. "System status?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "Can we move? Do we have control?" "Main propulsion offline," Captain Lieutenant Sharma replied. "Maneuvering systems respond minimally. Seems we're being held in some kind of containment field or invisible dock. Power stable from the reactors, but external systems are still experiencing interference. It's as if the city itself is examining us." "Examining us," Nate repeated. The thought was disturbing. They weren't explorers discovering ruins. They were specimens under an alien microscope. "Look, Captain," said Lieutenant Silver, pointing to the screen. Small lights, which had previously seemed like distant vehicles, were now approaching the Artemis. They weren't ships in the conventional sense, but rather spheres of pulsating light, moving with fluid, silent grace through the dark water. They stopped at a respectful distance, surrounding the motionless submarine. "They know we're here," Davies murmured, "and they don't look happy." Suddenly, one of the light spheres emitted a focused beam that swept across the Artemis's hull. It wasn't a destructive laser, but something more subtle, analytical. The consoles flickered again. "They're scanning us," Sharma said. "Level of detail incredible. They're mapping every system, every component, maybe even us." A shiver ran down Nate's spine. Being observed was one thing. Being remotely dissected by an alien intelligence was something else entirely. He looked at the city's architecture on the screen. The spiraling towers seemed made of luminous coral or cultivated crystal, emitting a soft, multicolored glow. There were no right angles, none of the rigidity of human construction. Everything flowed, organic yet geometrically complex, as if the very mathematics of this place were different. "Captain," called the communications officer. "I'm receiving a transmission. Not radio, not sonar. It's something different. Directed right at us. ... Can you decode it? Isolate any pattern?" Nate asked. "Negative, sir. It's incredibly complex. Seems information dense, but in a language or format we have no way to comprehend. It's like trying to read a book in an unknown tongue written in colors we can't see. As he spoke, a section of one of the nearby towers seemed to ripple, and a figure emerged from it, moving towards the Artemis without any apparent vehicle. It didn't swim, but glided through the water with impossible ease. The external cameras adjusted focus, providing a clearer image. The creature was tall and slender, vaguely humanoid in overall shape, but clearly not human. Its skin appeared translucent, with veins of bioluminescent light pulsing beneath. It had no face in the human sense, just a smooth oval surface that glowed softly. Long, thin limbs ended in delicate appendages that moved with precision. It wore no visible clothing or equipment. Its technology seemed integrated into its very being. The figure stopped a few meters from the submarine's hull, level with the bridge. It raised one of its slender limbs, and the unintelligible transmission the communications officer was receiving ceased. In its place, a new form of communication began, not through the speakers, but directly in the minds of everyone on the bridge. Intruders. The word wasn't spoken, but felt, a clear, cold, mental impression laden with disapproval and a vast, ancient authority. You have violated the threshold. Your presence here is disturbing. The shock of telepathic communication was almost as great as the sight of the city. Nate felt the minds around him waver, struggling to process the experience. He forced himself to respond, focusing his thoughts. We meant no intrusion, he projected, hoping the message would be received. We are explorers. Our vessel was pulled here by a force we do not understand. There was a mental pause, a sense of cold assessment. Your curiosity is a disease. Your technology, primitive and loud. You disturb the balance we have maintained for eons. Why did you come to this forbidden place? We were investigating anomalies, Nate replied, choosing his mental words carefully. Rumors of an unnatural structure. We did not know of your existence, of this city. Rumors. The mental impression came with a touch of disdain. Your kind is defined by rumors, by half-truths, by a relentless search for that which you cannot control. We have watched you for a long time, since your first clumsy vessels scratched the surface. We saw your growth, your violence, your capacity for self-destruction. We decided you were not ready. The implication was clear. This ancient, powerful civilization had deliberately hidden itself from humanity, judging it unworthy or too dangerous for contact. Who are you? Nate asked. We are the guardians of the deep, the architects of silence. We existed before your oldest mountains were young. We preserve this sanctuary against the turbulence of the surface world. Your unauthorized arrival is a grave failure. The alien figure made a subtle gesture, and the image on the main screen shifted, showing not the city, but glimpses of human history. Wars, pollution, the proliferation of nuclear weapons. The images were presented without explicit judgment, but the message was unmistakable. They saw humanity as a barbaric species, a potential threat to their isolated existence and perhaps to the planet itself. Your presence here cannot be tolerated. The mental communication continued, colder now. But your immediate destruction would also create unwanted disturbances. A decision must be made. The figure retreated slowly, gliding back towards the tower from which it had emerged. The spheres of light remained, maintaining their silent vigil. The telepathic communication ceased, leaving an even more unsettling void on the bridge. The crew looked at Nate, their faces a mixture of fear, awe, and uncertainty. They were trapped in an alien city at the bottom of the ocean, confronted by beings of immeasurable power and knowledge who considered them little more than a noisy pestilence. The initial wonder of discovery was rapidly replaced by the harsh reality of their precarious situation. They were intruders in a hidden realm, and their fate lay in the hands of a civilization that viewed humanity with deep contempt and mistrust. Nate's obsession had brought them here. Now, his leadership would be tested in ways no naval training could ever have prepared him for. The following days, if the concept of a day even applied in that sunless realm, passed in a state of tense limbo aboard the USS Artemis. The submarine remained motionless, secure but captive within the Guardian's invisible containment field. The crew struggled to maintain routine and discipline amidst the extraordinary and terrifying reality of their situation. Communication with the aliens was sporadic and unilateral. They initiated telepathic contact when they wished, usually to ask probing questions about human nature, technology, and history, or to issue veiled directives. Any attempt by the crew to initiate dialogue was met with mental silence. Nate Harris felt the pressure mounting from all directions. The responsibility for leading his crew into this situation weighed on him like the crushing pressure of the abyss outside. He spent hours on the bridge, studying the images of the alien city, trying to decipher the logic behind its fluid, luminous architecture, searching for any clue, any weakness. At the same time, he tried to formulate a diplomatic strategy, a way to convince his captors that humanity, despite its obvious flaws, was not an inherent threat, and that their release was the most logical solution. "We come in peace," Nate projected during one of the rare communication sessions initiated by the Guardians. "Our presence here was accidental. Allowing our departure would be the demonstration of wisdom and understanding we expect from such an advanced civilization." The mental response was cold, devoid of emotion. "Peace. Your species barely understands the concept. Your interactions are based on competition, domination, and fear. Your peace is merely the interval between conflicts. Your technology, even this stealth vessel, is designed for war. We also have the capacity for cooperation, for creation, for empathy," Nate countered, fighting frustration. "You see only the worst in us. Allow us to show you the best. We have seen enough over the millennia," was the final reply before contact was severed again, leaving Nate with a feeling of helplessness. The Guardian's disdain for humanity was palpable, an almost insurmountable barrier to any meaningful negotiation. They saw themselves as curators of a planet that humanity was actively harming, and the uninvited arrival of the Artemis only reinforced their negative view. They didn't seem interested in diplomacy. They were assessing an infestation. While Nate grappled with alien intransigence, internal tensions began to surface among the Artemis crew. Prolonged fear and uncertainty were fraying discipline. Factions started to form, whispering in the dark corridors. Some crew members, informally led by the pragmatic chief engineer, Lieutenant Sharma, believed the only hope lay in total cooperation, providing the Guardians with whatever information they requested in the hope of gaining their trust or mercy. "Captain, we have to be realistic," Sharma argued during a tense officers' meeting in the conference room. "They are immensely superior. Resistance is suicide. Maybe if we show them we can be useful, that we can learn, they'll let us go. Or maybe this is the future. A forced first contact." Others, however, saw the situation differently. Chief Petty Officer Davies, the veteran sonar officer, represented a more cautious, perhaps even hostile group. Cooperation. "Sharma, they see us as insects. They're dissecting us mentally, rummaging through our systems. Every piece of information we give them is a potential weapon they could use against us, or against Earth, if they decide we're too great a threat. We can't trust them. We need to find a way out of here on our own." A third, smaller but vocal group was succumbing to despair and the strange psychological influences of the environment. Reports of subtle hallucinations persisted. Glimpses of movement in the corner of the eye, inaudible whispers, vivid and disturbing dreams that seemed shared among different crew members. Some began to question the very reality of their situation, suggesting they might have died or were trapped in a complex simulation. Nate found himself caught between these factions, trying to maintain unity and morale while navigating the perilous interaction with the Guardians. He understood Sharma's logic, but shared Davies' concerns. Blindly handing over information could be disastrous, but how could they escape a technological prison that was beyond their comprehension? He decided on a dual path, a risky strategy of apparent diplomacy and secret planning. Publicly, he instructed the crew to cooperate with the Guardians' inquiries, but in a limited fashion, answering only direct questions and avoiding volunteering sensitive information about Earth's military capabilities or planetary defenses. He continued his attempts to establish a more meaningful dialogue, emphasizing the potential for peaceful, cultural, and scientific exchange. Secretly, however, he assembled a small, trusted team, including Davies and Silver, to analyze any data they could gather about the Guardian's technology and the containment field holding the Artemis. They worked in shifts, using isolated and encrypted systems, searching for patterns, energy fluctuations, any exploitable vulnerability. It was a Herculean task, like trying to dismantle a warp drive with a wrench, but it was the only alternative to passive submission. The Guardians, with their vast intelligence, were likely aware of these secret activities. Nate operated under the assumption they were allowing it, perhaps as part of their own study of human behavior under pressure, or perhaps because they considered the crew's efforts futile and irrelevant. The tension escalated when the Guardians made a specific request: direct access to the Artemis main databanks, including full weapon specifications, nuclear command protocols, and detailed historical records of humanity. They presented this not as a request, but as a requirement to continue their assessment of the situation. This forced Nate's hand. Handing over this data was unthinkable, a betrayal of everything he had sworn to protect. Refusing outright could provoke immediate and likely fatal retaliation. Deception became his only tool. "We are preparing the requested data," Nate projected, buying time. "Our systems are complex and require careful security protocols to prevent data corruption during transfer." While pretending to cooperate, he instructed his secret team to accelerate their efforts. They needed to find a way to disable the containment field or create a significant diversion, and they needed to do it before Nate's bluff was called. Diplomacy had failed. Cooperation was dangerous. The only remaining option was escape, a desperate gamble against impossible odds, predicated on the hope that even an ancient and powerful civilization might have a flaw, a blind spot that primitive but stubborn human ingenuity could exploit. Nate's secret team worked feverishly under the guise of routine maintenance and system diagnostics. Chief Petty Officer Davies, with his keen intuition for sonic and energy patterns, focused on analyzing the low-frequency emissions that seemed to emanate from the containment field itself. Lieutenant Silvers scoured the limited data the Artemis sensors could gather about the alien city, searching for energy nodes or potential weak points in the grid that held them fast. It was slow, frustrating work, like searching for a needle in a cosmic haystack, while the implicit deadline imposed by the Guardian's data request loomed closer. Meanwhile, Nate continued the dangerous game of diplomacy and delay with his captors. During one particularly long communication session, he tried appealing to the Guardian's logic, arguing that holding the Artemis and its crew indefinitely posed a greater risk than releasing them with a stern warning. "Your continued presence here is an anomaly," Nate projected. "Eventually, our disappearance will be noted. Others will come looking for us. Your seclusion will be compromised. Releasing us on the condition of our silence would be the most prudent solution to preserve your isolation." There was a long mental pause, longer than usual, before the reply came, and this time it carried a different tone, not of disdain, but of something deeper, perhaps even a form of ancient sorrow, prudence, silence. "Your species does not comprehend these concepts in their fullness. You seek, you reveal, you explore without considering the consequences. It was this same impulsiveness that nearly destroyed our world eons ago." Nate sensed an opening. "Your world, you are not native to Earth." No, the answer was simple, yet heavy with history. "We came from the stars. A time ago your species can barely conceive. Our home world was consumed by a war that began, like yours, with unchecked curiosity and the pursuit of power. We sought refuge here in the silent depths of this aquatic planet, a place where we could heal, observe, and ensure the mistakes of the past were not repeated, neither by us nor by others." The revelation was stunning. The Guardians were not just aliens. They were cosmic refugees, survivors of a self-inflicted apocalypse. Their isolation wasn't just disdain for humanity. It was a deep, ingrained fear born of unimaginable trauma. We built this city, this sanctuary, to be a bastion against the entropy of violence and careless exploitation. The alien mind continued. We watched your species evolve with hope and apprehension. We saw your potential for greatness, but also your innate capacity for destruction. Your discovery of atomic energies, your splitting of the very fabric of reality to create weapons of unimaginable power. It was a dark echo of our own past. Is that why you hide? Nate asked. For fear that we will repeat your mistakes. Fear is a simplification, the Guardian replied. It is a matter of preservation, not just of ourselves, but of the delicate balance of this world we have adopted. Your technology advances at an exponential rate, but your wisdom does not keep pace. You play with forces you do not fully comprehend, both on your planet and in your attempts to reach the stars. Your arrival here, breaching the barriers we erected, is proof that you are not yet ready. The conversation left Nate deeply shaken. The Guardian's perspective, though harsh, now seemed less arbitrary, more understandable. They weren't cold monsters, but traumatized survivors trying to protect their new home from a species they saw as dangerously immature. Yet, this understanding didn't change the immediate situation. The Artemis was still a prisoner, and the implicit threat to humanity, should they be deemed too great a risk, still hung in the air. The revelation about the Guardian's origins and motivations spread quickly through the crew, relayed by Nate in a tense briefing. The news had a polarizing effect. For some, like Lieutenant Sharma, it reinforced the need for cooperation and understanding. They have valid reasons for their caution, Captain. Perhaps we can learn from them, show them we are capable of change. For others, like Davies, the revelation was even more alarming. Refugees, survivors, that makes them even more dangerous. They'll do anything to protect this place, to prevent history from repeating itself. If they decide we're an existential threat, they won't hesitate to eliminate us, and maybe even strike at Earth to ensure their isolation. Our bluff won't last, Captain. We need to act now. The pressure on Nate intensified. Time was running out. Davies' team reported minimal progress in understanding the containment field. It was a form of energy or spatial manipulation that was beyond their theoretical grasp, let alone their ability to counteract it. It was then that Silver made a crucial discovery. Analyzing energy patterns within the alien city itself, he noticed rhythmic, regular fluctuations that seemed to coincide with maintenance or power transfer cycles within the metropolis. There was a moment, very brief, approximately every 12 hours, when the energy feeding the containment field seemed to dip slightly, as if momentarily diverted to other critical systems. It's not enough to disable the field, Captain Silver explained, pointing to complex graphs on the screen. But it might be a window, a slight drop in integrity. Maybe, just maybe, if we hit the field emitter with an energy surge at precisely that moment, We could create a temporary breach, enough to escape. It was a long shot, based on incomplete data and a great deal of supposition. The energy surge would have to come from the Artemis-owned systems, perhaps discharging capacitors or even using a small focused sonic burst, which would immediately reveal their hostile intentions and likely destroy any remaining chance of diplomacy. Nate found himself at a critical crossroads. Continue the charade of cooperation, hoping the Guardians might eventually see humanity in a different light, or risk everything on a desperate escape attempt based on Silver's discovery. The first option seemed increasingly naive, given the Guardians' deep-seated mistrust. The second was incredibly risky. Failure would almost certainly be fatal. Success meant they might escape, but they would have confirmed the Guardians' worst fears about humanity's aggressive, untrustworthy nature, potentially triggering unforeseen future consequences. He looked at the faces of his crew, torn between cautious hope and growing fear. He thought of the Guardians' revelations, their tragic past, and their understandable fear. But he also thought of his duty, his crew, the world they had left behind. Obsession had brought him here, but now the decision wasn't about satisfying his curiosity, but about survival and the burden of command. Prepare the focused sonic discharge, Nate said. The decision made. His voice was firm, but the weight of the choice was evident in his eyes. Synchronize with the next energy fluctuation window Lieutenant Silver identified. Prepare all propulsion systems for immediate activation on my command. We're going home, or we're going to try. The order spread through the submarine. The atmosphere shifted from passive tension to focused, feverish activity. Diplomacy was over. The deception was about to be revealed. The repercussions, whatever they might be, were coming. Minutes leading up to the window of opportunity identified by Silver dragged on with excruciating slowness. Every crew member was at their station, the tension on the bridge so thick it seemed to have its own gravity. Nate Harris watched the digital chronometer on the main console, the seconds ticking away towards the calculated moment. Around him, the faces of his officers were masks of tense concentration, each aware that the next actions could mean their salvation or their ultimate annihilation. He ran the plan through his mind for the 100th time. The focused sonic discharge, calibrated to hit the estimated emission point of the containment. Field at the exact instant of the minimal energy fluctuation. Simultaneously, Lieutenant Sharma would divert non-essential power to momentarily overload the main thrusters, ready for a full burn if the breach opened. It was a complex symphony of timing and technology, a desperate gamble against an immeasurably superior adversary. Do they know? The question echoed in Nate's mind. Could the Guardians, with their telepathy and advanced technology, have anticipated their every move? Were they merely watching, allowing the humans' petty rebellion to unfold before crushing it? Or had the arrogance of their vast superiority made them complacent? 10 seconds to the window, Silver announced, his voice low and steady. Nate took a deep breath. All stations, prepare for execution on my command. Confirmations came from throughout the ship. The low hum of the systems seemed to intensify. Or perhaps it was just the blood pounding in his ears. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now. Silver commanded. Engage, Nate ordered. A pulse of energy, almost imperceptible but immensely powerful, lanced out from the Artemis sonic emitters. At the same moment, a deep groan came from the ship's bowels as Sharma unleashed the stored energy into the dormant thrusters. For an instant that felt like an eternity, nothing happened. The submarine remained motionless, the alien city outside continuing its serene glow. It failed, Nate thought, a desperate cold beginning to spread through his chest. But then there was a subtle shift, a visual ripple in the space around the Artemis, like heat haze rising from asphalt. Alarms sounded on the Guardian consoles, or at least Nate imagined they did, as the spheres of light that watched them began to pulse erratically, their calm vigil broken. Fluctuation in the containment field, Davy shouted. Integrity compromised, 30% 40, it's working. Thrusters, full power, Nate roared. Course 000, straight up. The USS Artemis surged to life. The powerful nuclear thrusters, silent for so long, awoke with a contained roar, and the multi-thousand-ton submarine began to move, sluggishly at first, then gaining speed, rising from the depths of the alien city towards the unknown darkness above. They're reacting, Silver warned. Multiple energy signatures converging on our position. The city below responded. Lights flashed with greater intensity. Structures that had previously seemed merely decorative now revealed hidden capabilities. Beams of energy, not destructive in nature, but tractor-like or containment nets, shot towards the fleeing submarine. Evasive maneuvers, Nate yelled as the Artemis dodged a bluish beam that sizzled past the stern. Sharma, give me everything you've got. The submarine climbed, a small, desperate bubble of human technology trying to escape a godlike power. The Guardian's telepathic communication flooded the bridge again, no longer cold and assessing, but charged with an icy fury and profound disappointment. Fools, your aggression confirms our fears. You do not learn. The intensity of the mental projection was overwhelming, causing several crew members to stagger, clutching their heads. Nate fought against the psychic intrusion, focusing on escape. We just want to go home. He projected back, a mixture of defiance and plea. There will be no easy return, was the ominous reply. The consequences of your actions will reverberate. The Artemis continued its desperate ascent. They passed what seemed to be the upper limit of the city, plunging into the total blackness of the abyss above it. But they weren't free. The containment field, though weakened, still exerted an influence, slowing their progress, while energies from the city tried to pull them back. Damage to the aft hull. Life support systems compromised in Sector 4. Reported an officer. Keep climbing, Nate urged. Davies, any readings from the outside world? Are we close to our own reality? Negative, Captain. Readings still off the scale. It's like we're still between worlds. Or maybe we never fully left. The submarine shuddered violently as another energy beam struck it. Lights flickered, more alarms sounded, and then As suddenly as the capture came another shift, a sense of displacement, less violent than the first, but equally disorienting. Instrument readings went haywire for a moment, then settled into something recognizable, familiar. Captain Silver stammered, eyes fixed on his screen. Depth 3,000 meters. External pressure normal for this depth. Position coast of California, near the original coordinates of Sycamore Knoll. Silence. The crew looked around, blinking in the normal bridge light which had returned. The steady hum of the submarine's systems was now a familiar comfort, not an anomaly. Outside, through the cameras, only the impenetrable darkness of the deep ocean. Had they made it? Had they escaped? Ship status? Nate asked, his voice hoarse. Significant damage, but controllable, Sharma replied. Reactors stable. Propulsion functional. We can make it to the surface and navigate to base. A collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge. Some crew members grinned, others wept silently. They had faced the impossible and, somehow, survived. But as the Artemis ascended slowly towards the surface, Nate Harris did not share his crew's relief. He stood before the dark screen that had once shown the alien city. The image now burned forever into his mind. They had escaped, yes, but at what cost? His obsession had led them to the brink of annihilation. His decision to flee, while perhaps necessary for survival, had confirmed the Guardian's worst fears about humanity. The consequences of your actions will reverberate. The mental threat echoed in his head. Had they merely postponed the inevitable? Had they, in their desperate flight, lit the fuse for a future conflict, not just for themselves, but for all humankind? The Guardians knew where to find them. They had proven capable of manipulating space, of reaching wherever they wished. Their sanctuary had been violated, their long isolation broken by the stubborn curiosity of a species they deemed barbaric. Would they let this transgression stand? Nate looked down at his hands. They were steady, the hands of a trained naval commander, but he felt a deep tremor within, an uncertainty that might never leave him. He had sought the unknown and found it, but the discovery brought no clarity, only deeper, darker questions about humanity's place in the cosmos. Were they the explorers destined to reach the stars, or just noisy children playing with fire in a vast, indifferent universe, watched over by ancient, wary intelligences? The Artemis breached the surface under the starry California sky. Cool ocean air rushed in through opened hatches. They were back in their world, but was it the same world? Or had the brief, terrifying foray into the abyssal threshold changed them forever, leaving an indelible mark on their souls and perhaps on the very destiny of their species? Nate Harris, the captain who defied orders for obsession, had no answers, only the crushing weight of what he had seen, what he had done, and the uneasy feeling that the real mystery was just beginning.